I realized it was these elements of my identity that made me different. That was actually my superpower. This is why I was been able to build a company that shares the perspectives of people who are often left out of mainstream media dialogues, who are not considered by the fashion industry. Wow. Hello, everyone.
Imran, I forgot to tell a few more of your honors. You are an appointed member of the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth. You've been named most influential man in fashion, one of the 50 most globally influential Indians, and one of the 100 most influential figures in Britain's digital economy. Are you sometimes impressed with yourself?
Sometimes I still pinch myself. You know, thank you for that very kind introduction. You know, I'm sitting here in this chair, able to engage with an audience like this, and you know, sometimes it does feel a little bit like a dream. But yes, I'm proud of myself too, and I'm proud of my team. We've worked so hard to build something differentiated, as you said, in a very challenging, I'm going to take these off, a very challenging media context and media environment. But I'm focused on, you know, plowing through and staying true to my purpose, staying true to my mission of what we're trying to do, which is to open this fashion industry up. Not just for people who work inside the fashion industry, but also for everyone else who wants to be a part of it. And I think that's been the biggest change that's happened in the industry over the last 10 or 15 years.
Let's go back to this transformation of the industry, media, as well as fashion. Why it was extremely challenged by technology, globalization, shifting consumer values. Why do you think it needed an outsider or an outside perspective to disrupt the industry?
I didn't even really know it needed an outsider, if I'm honest. I was drawn to the industry because of my long-held fascination with fashion, you know, as a customer growing up in Canada. But in retrospect, I think when you have any group of people that's really closed off, and the fashion industry was really closed off. It was this very exclusive, inner, insular world of people. And when you have someone like me, who's a complete outsider, come in and start looking around, you know, you can bring a different perspective. You're not entrenched in the prevailing wisdom or conventional wisdom of things must be done a certain way, or these are the rules of how things should work. You know, I came in with curiosity and passion, and I just asked questions about, well, why can't it be done this way? Or, you know, does this really make sense anymore, given all of the change that's happening? And so when you have, you know, a shifting technological landscape, when you have the globalization of the industry, when you have consumers who are more conscious about the way they engage with companies and with brands, I was observing all of this, and my training at McKinsey was such that, you know, I would dip in and out of all sorts of industries all around the world, and I was beginning to form a mental map of how this industry works. And then I said, well, you know, this industry doesn't exist in a bubble. It exists in the context of a global economy. It exists in the context of a technological landscape that's rapidly shifting. And so I just started asking questions, really.
Talking about asking questions, BOF has now the largest community of fashion professionals. In times of print, you said you would not have been able to achieve that. To what extent did not only technology and social media, but also asking questions through surveys, through data, accelerate the growth of business and the growth of and the interest in business of fashion?
You know, often when you hear the stories of entrepreneurs, they talk about timing. And for me personally, as I reflect on, what happened, I think it was Steve Jobs who said, like, you can connect the dots when you look backwards. I look backwards now and I realize that on your first point around social media, I started writing BOF just at the time when these social platforms were beginning to emerge and before the mainstream media was really using them seriously. And so this little window of opportunity opened, and I happened to just step into it. And when you ask the kinds of questions I was asking, when you create meaningful ideas and content, we now know things can spread. We talk about viral content or viral memes or viral videos. I kind of stumbled into that from the beginning. I was asking these questions that nobody in the industry was asking, and so people would forward my emails, and then when Twitter took off, they started sharing the links to my articles, and then that continued on Facebook and Instagram, and now with TikTok, our content just spreads because it's interesting and provocative content. With regards to like surveys, no, surveys didn't really play a role in the way we formally started creating content. It was really an interaction and a conversation. A lot of the way media works nowadays is, it's not just, an authoritative media company, sending out information one way. The way media works now is it's a dialogue. And so I spent a lot of time in the comments, and people would say, well, what do you think about this? Or have you thought about this topic? Or could you please write an article on that? It's this dialogue that helped to generate this kind of phenomenon that happened.
And what helped you get all the people that you by now get? I mean, it's the who is who of the industry, the CEOs, the creatives. You came at the right timing. The iPhone was just invented. You asked questions and read the comments, but I mean, you didn't get Kim Kardashian in the first year, I'm sure. So how did you get these people, and how do you balance the glam with the substance, which is important for a media company?
Yeah. So I think you're particularly referencing BOF Voices, which you've attended now on a couple of occasions. The first year at BOF Voices, we had the CEO of Gucci, Marco Bizzarri. We had the CEO of Farfetch, Jose Neves. We had Amber Valletta, the supermodel. We had John Galliano, the legendary designer. And we had the really successful photographer, Mario Testino. And I think sometimes when you hear names like that in our industry, we see them as these iconic, unapproachable figures. At the end of the day, Bianca, those kinds of people are people too. They're motivated and interested in the same things as the rest of us. And so in trying to conceive of an event that would draw those people, I first needed to spend time with our team thinking about, well, what's the purpose of this event? The fashion industry is littered with events. We spend our whole year, as you know, going to fashion shows and sitting at fancy dinners, and there were already business conferences focused on the fashion industry. And so I spent a lot of time in the early years just attending a lot of these events, attending a lot of events outside the fashion industry, and trying to think about, well, what would be the purpose of a different kind of fashion event? And what I found was that within the fashion industry, a lot of the events were just fashion people talking to fashion people about fashion. It was an echo chamber. There was a lot of self-congratulation. And unfortunately, any industry that's operating in a bubble, they're losing perspective of how what they do is connected to what's happening everywhere else. And so we started with a real sense of purpose, which is we want to break this bubble. We want to connect and bring together the people shaping the fashion industry with the people shaping the wider world. So yes, we brought in scientists and philanthropists and educators and other cultural leaders from other sectors. And we mixed all of these people together. That was the first idea. The second thing was, how do I want these people to feel? So many fashion events, it's an industry where people put on these personas. They wear a mask. They always feel like they have to project a certain image. So I wanted to create something where people took those masks off, where they could just be themselves. So instead of doing BOF voices in the center of a city in a like 4-5-star hotel, and we took them to the English countryside, to a farm. They all had to like trudge their way in the middle of November in the kind of rainy, cold English weather, wearing rubber boots. I wanted them to feel like they were outside the power corridors that they're used to, and instead in a different place. And you just, you take people outside their normal comfort zone and you put them in a place where they're not sure what they should wear, they're not sure how they should behave, and, their guards come down. And this enabled us to create something that, even though we pulled all those big names in the first year, I knew that the most important thing was that those people would come and be like, I've never been to a fashion industry event like that. And every year we've tried, and my team, my team works so hard on this every year. Like, every year we work so hard to make it better and better and better, building on that original concept of mixing the influential people of fashion with the people shaping the world around us.
It's a bit the outsider still that, has the other perspective.
Yeah.
But talking about another component for the growth and success for these events and BOF, I think, is your roots. You have Indian roots from your parents who were born in Africa, met at the University of Nairobi, and immigrated to Canada, where you were born and raised. You often share, it's important, that's why you share this personal background. Also, you share your expertise as a Muslim and as a gay against the backdrop of Islamophobia, homophobia, and racism. And you often speak about how you were bullied as a kid because you were small. So how did this feeling of being different drive you and also help you build a global company?
Yeah, thank you for asking this question, because for a long time I didn't talk about my background or my identity. My parents left Nairobi with very little money and big dreams for me. My mom was 5 months pregnant when they landed. They moved from, East African beautiful weather in December to probably like minus 30 degrees Celsius in Calgary, Canada. And it was a big shock for them. And now that I've shifted countries a couple of times, I really think a lot about what they had to do in order to integrate into a completely new culture. And it was hard. And there were a lot of expectations for what I would do.
Talking about expectations, I read in the book that you wrote that your father said on the day of your birth, this boy will go to Harvard. No pressure, but it worked, yeah.
It's true, he said that. And I think as I reflect on why he said that now, it was because they wanted for me financial security, psychological safety, which they did not have. That was their main priority. And so for a long time, all of these elements of my identity were hidden because I was in a very straight, white, alpha male environment in most of my education, in most of my professional experiences. And I had to work really, really hard to make up for what I saw were differences or deficiencies in my identity. And I worked really, really hard. But that didn't really give me any sense of joy or fulfillment. It wasn't until I had the confidence to leave that very secure professional path, much to the concern of my parents, who were really worried. Why would their son, who has this very high-paying, prestigious job at this famous company, leave to try to make it in the fashion industry, an industry which neither of them really understood. And then as I got into the industry, I found, again, it's an industry that's dominated by Western perspectives, by mostly straight white men living in New York or Paris or London, even for an industry that's mostly targeted at women. 60 to 65% of the customers in the fashion industry are women. A lot of it didn't make sense to me. But still, I didn't talk about my identity because I wanted to be known as an entrepreneur first. I didn't want to be known as the kind of gay, Muslim, South Asian entrepreneur. I wanted to be known as an entrepreneur for my work. And then a few things happened where when I started talking about my identity, I realized that's actually what really connects me to so many people. And I started receiving a flood of messages from all around the world, from people who saw one slice of themselves in my identity, whether they were like an East African Canadian or a gay Muslim, or someone who was really small and faced a lot of bullying when they were growing up. And as I started talking about these experiences, I realized it was these elements of my identity that made me different that was actually my superpower. This is why I was been able to build a company that shares the perspectives of people who are often left out of mainstream media dialogues, who are not considered by the fashion industry. And even now, in my chair, in this seat, when I can speak with an audience like this, because of what my team and I have built together, I still face discrimination in the industry. I still face misunderstandings or miscomprehensions about what being a Muslim means, or what being a South Asian means, or what being a gay Muslim South Asian means. And so these are perspectives that help you understand that for people who grow up or an industry that's so dominated by a Western narrative, that's so dominated by a straight, white, male business leadership, when those of us who have different identities, who have marginalized backgrounds, however it might be, we can bring perspectives that are valid and important for our industry to understand. And I know that's why I'm here. That's why I have these kinds of opportunities.
You mentioned that these differences also help you navigate more and more complex world that is becoming more global and more diverse. So does this sentiment, I mean, this sentiment, or that also meets very much the zeitgeist, does this sentiment help you build significance for BOF?
What do you mean?
I mean, does this, you as with a diverse background, meeting the zeitgeist of a world that is becoming more and more complex and diverse and global. So did this help, you know, this background help build significance and purpose, and to integrate purpose into the business of fashion?
Yeah, I think it has. It's a conversation I have with so many of our team members. You know, we're a small team of 100 people. I think when you're building a company, one of the greatest things that you can do is build a company with a clear mission and purpose. And I think so many of the young people, and even some of the older people we hire, they're looking for more meaning and purpose in their jobs. And when we can build a team of people and attract, super high quality people. I mean, we have people who've worked in some of the biggest, most famous companies, who've gone to the biggest and most famous colleges, who come from like more than 25 countries. People who are really talented. You know, everyone wants to be connected to a sense of mission and purpose. So if we're able to connect to the zeitgeist, it's because we have a team of people who really believe in it. And the zeitgeist is now about media companies and industries engaging with a more globalized customer base, with a more diverse industry, and a more complex world. Like, how do you make sense of all of the different parts of the economy, of geopolitics, of the changing landscape of culture and identity? You can better speak to a very complex, changing customer base if your own team is complex and different and has those different perspectives.
But is this purpose always appreciated also by your investors? You have by now almost a dozen investors. I mean, they want to see the numbers, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, so we have a very supportive group of investors who from the beginning understood that this is what I'm building, what our team is building, is a purpose-driven brand for the next 100 years. I'm not trying to build a flip and sell kind of company. If I wanted to do that, I would have gone into much different paths coming out of Harvard Business School than I did. If I wanted to make a company, sell it for $1 billion, that path was available to me. That's not what I'm building. You know, the last time the fashion industry had a media brand built for 100 years was Vogue. And I looked it up this morning, and Vogue was founded in 1898, more than 100 years ago. BOF is being built for the next 100 years. And our investors understood that we're building a purpose-driven company, a brand and community company, and a company that prides itself on independent journalism, where we are able to say in a constructive yet fearless way what we really believe. All of our investors understand, and they have signed documentation underscoring that they understand, that the only way, the real value of what we do is that we ask those tough questions. And we only want to do so in a way that's constructive. You know, we're not here to tear things down. We're here to build things up. But in order to build something new, you need to ask tough questions.
And even if they don't like what you publish, they don't try to compromise the content.
Listen, almost every week, I get a call from people who don't like what we've published. And it's not just our investors. Actually, more often than not, it's everybody. I mean, just yesterday, I was navigating a situation where our team asked some tough questions to someone who was featured on the website, and I had to go back to that team and explain, and our team had to go back to that, explain that what our mission and purpose is. So, like, as long as you're clear, you know, we have these two competing values that we balance when it comes to our editorial, which is it needs to be constructive, but it also needs to be fearless. And so, you know, our team knows that. Our investors know that, and after more than 17 years since I started on that sofa writing this blog, our community knows that too.
Heidi, I know I have to finish, but I think I have. Give me one more question, because I think that's important. You just said you want to, BOF is here to stay for the next 100 years. You've been growing BOF, and also in terms of turnover and gross profit, but you reached profitability only recently.
Yeah.
Just very quick answer, because we're a bit delayed. How do you planning to sustain this profitability for the future? Almost 80 years.
Yeah, this is the most exciting part of my job, right? So now that we have built in what is a very challenging media environment, a sustainably profitable business that's still growing, we're focused on innovations. So the same playbook that we used in the fashion industry, we're now using in the beauty industry. We have recently been really focusing our attention on the business of beauty. We've launched a new data and an advisory team called BOF Insights, which is partnering with an AI company called Quilt AI to provide really, you know, I think Scott Galloway had this slide on stage yesterday showing that we're sitting on mountains of data, but no one can make sense of it. That's what BOF Insights is doing. And you know, our team and I are always thinking about the next things that we can build now that we have this solid foundation. So, you know, it's only just beginning.
Thank you very much, Imran. And now I hand over to Heidi and the bar.
Yeah, thank you so much, Imran. And I have to say, I am a huge fan of BOF. I've been trying to get Imran here for over 5 years now. I'm so thrilled it worked out this year. Thank you also for making yourself vulnerable and sharing some of these personal experiences. I think it's really powerful. Often we think we're very different, but then we find commonalities with people when we open up in that way. So thank you. Thank you to Imran Amed and Bianca Lam.
Can I do one thing and take a selfie with the audience? Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I don't normally do this, but I saw Kim Kardashian do it yesterday. And all right. Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Yo!